Hey everyone, my name is Fred. I work for Orisha Automation, and you're watching a re recording of our webinar called the 3 Days Off Challenge. So, we did a webinar at the beginning of September. It was to talk about how market gardeners, growers can get the right tools to be able to take time off while they are on their farm. We know it's a challenge for a lot of people to be able to take time off, and we know that your job can be exhausting. So I hope that today you'll find useful tips to be able to take some time off at the farm. We start first with a quote from one of our friends called Antoine, who's a market gardener from Quebec, who said earlier this season that we've been working hard for a while and we are not done. We have been watering our tomatoes since January. So yeah, it says a lot about the state of his mental health right now. I hope that yours is a bit better than that, but probably that you can relate to his statement. The ways that we're going to look today at how we can give you the right tools to be able to take time off of your farm is going to be divided into four different categories. The first one is going to be tools for your greenhouse, then tools for your deliveries, farmers, the markets, and all of your other sales channel. The third way is going to be how you can make sure that you can take 3 days off and your field can stay in good shape during that. And at the end, we're going to look at how you can actually delegate some of those tasks while you take a weekend off. So first off, we're going to go with your greenhouse. So for a lot of you, if you had to take time off, I'm sure that one of your first worries would be, well, if I want to take 3 days off, what's going to happen with my greenhouse? A greenhouse can be a big source of revenue, but it can also be a big source of worries, especially if left unattended for a whole weekend or 3 days. So yeah, we're going to see how we can help with that greenhouse. We know that a greenhouse can have a lot of mood swings, especially as we're getting further and further into fall. So you cannot leave your roll-ups open all day like in July during fall because during the day the sun can warm up your greenhouse, but the air is getting colder. So that can cause fruit splitting because the high temperature drops around the sunset, and that can bring a lot of problems. So you have two choices in that case. So automation can fix that. If you don't use automation, the other way to go is just to do non-stop back and forth to your greenhouse. So it's hot in the greenhouse, so you have to go to the greenhouse. You have to crank your sides open to cool down the greenhouse, and then when the cloud comes by, you have to run back to the greenhouse to crank your sides down because the only thing that was warming up your greenhouse is now gone. So you have to make sure to keep that precious heat in the greenhouse and to make sure that it's going to cool down appropriately just before sunset, just so that you won't have that fruit splitting. And yeah, automation can fix that. There are different ways to automate. So if you want to automate your roll-ups, you can do that by motorizing those sides. So instead of having those cranks, you can have motors, and those motors are able to make your sides go up and down depending on a temperature target. So what you can do is automation solutions can have a threshold temperature, and if it gets colder in a certain point, it closes, or if it gets warmer in a certain point, it opens. So you can make sure that in the shoulder season, like now, or in the spring, a good thing to do is to have those sides automated, because if not, your greenhouse is going to have a lot of mood swings. If you can't automate, however, you can always manually close your roll-ups before the sun sets to smooth out the temperature decrease. So that will help to prevent the fruit splitting, and that will make sure that your plants are going to be in a much better shape as you get further into fall. And if you want to take some time off, if you don't automate, how can you do it? Maybe you can ask a neighbor, a friend, or someone just to make sure that if they're close by, they can come, and at least they can maybe not do all the back and forths you do during the day, but at least have someone who can manually close your roll-ups before the sun sets and open them as sun rises, just to make sure that you will avoid those extremes in your greenhouse. So yeah, asking a friend or neighbor, that can really be helpful. Um, as for irrigation, If you're not automated at all, it might be something you do by hand. So while you're not here, what's going to happen if you don't irrigate? So, well, a lot of things. We all know plants need water. So the first thing you can do is just make sure that it's irrigated in different ways, because if not, yeah, your plants are not going to feel well, but also that can cause some blossom and rot. So the ways we can look at that is first, yeah, automation is a good way to go. So if we look, for example, at Orisha, the way we do it is you can set up an irrigation program for different cloud cover conditions. So you can create an irrigation program for when it's sunny, partly cloudy or cloudy, and just make sure that your plants will get enough water for the different cloud covers conditions that can happen in your greenhouse. So on a sunnier day, you'll get more irrigation, and on a cloudy day, you'll get less irrigation. So that's the way to do it. Orisha would just turn on a valve that makes water go to your plants. If you don't want automation, you can also delegate. Again, that friend, that neighbor, if they can just make sure that they go often enough to your greenhouse while you're away to have your plants stay in good shape for the rest of the season, you can leave the house and the greenhouse and just have a little bit more peace of mind. One thing that also happens a lot in fall, especially, is powdery mildew. Powdery mildew, which can cause a lot of problems, especially for those cash crops like tomatoes. There are a few ways to prevent it, and especially powdery mildew. I would say that the sooner the better. So the powdery mildew you're seeing in the fall is something that you have to prevent starting ideally in August or before. So it's something that happens or proliferates when your greenhouse is really humid. So if you're able to dehumidify during the summer when it still seems hot and powdery mildew doesn't seem like it's a problem, you'll make sure that by the time it gets colder, it won't have time to have grown on your plants, and then you won't have leaves that look like that during the fall. Of course, if you don't do it in July, August, and you see some powdery mildew starting to form on your plants, it's not too late to reduce damage it can do. So you can always dehumidify during the fall. It's going to make it not as bad. And if you invest in an automation solution to dehumidify, as you're seeing powdery mildew starting to appear in the fall, you'll still have it next year to make sure to start the season on the right foot and make sure that then your next fall is going to be a lot better than what you're experiencing right now. So if you're looking at your plants and the leaves look like that and you're thinking never again, automation is a way you can solve such a problem. And another thing, we were talking about irrigation just before. If you often go to the greenhouse, it takes a lot of time for you to go to back and forth to the greenhouse to automate, to irrigate by hand, and you realize that your soil is always wet. Well, that says two things about the way you irrigate. Well, one thing that has two consequences. So you irrigate too much. So the two consequences of that is your soil is always wet, so that creates a lot of air humidity, and also you take too much time irrigating. So maybe you can do less back and forth in a greenhouse, still have healthy plants, and make sure that you don't have as much humidity related problems in your greenhouse by going less to your greenhouse to irrigate it. Other ways to prevent, always fungicide is always great. Pruning. So if you have tomato plants in your greenhouse and you're in one of your rows and you can't see on the other side, it means that you have too many leaves on your tomato plants. So pruning it will make sure that you can increase the airflow between your plants and make sure that by increasing this airflow there can be less humidity between your plants, and that will create less humidity related diseases. Without automation, if you want to prevent humidity related diseases and you don't really know how to dehumidify your greenhouse, you can do manual pulses. So the way to do that would be, if you have a heater, you can always for a few minutes, let's say around 6 to 7 minutes, you can start your heater and open your roll-ups. That can seem counterintuitive, but by doing that you heat up the air in the greenhouse, and the hot air absorbs more humidity that's not going to be in your plants. And by opening your sides, you flush that humid air out and replace it by outside air that's drier. That's one way to do it. And also, just in prevention, you can always manually close your roll-ups before the sun sets, and that's going to smooth out the temperature drop in your greenhouse and prevent dew that can cause a lot of mildew as well, or other humidity-related diseases. We've talked about humidity, but of course, fall means that it can be colder in the greenhouse, and you're probably worrying at this point of the season, will my plants freeze at night? Um, there are a few ways to prevent that. There's always a good old thermostat like the one we have at the bottom here. So the same kind of thermostat you would have in your house, if you can have that in your greenhouse connected to your heater or to any kind of heater that you have, that could help to make just keep your greenhouse's temperature above freezing. That can help to save your plants. That can help to finish your season the right way. Uh, a thermostat is good in some sense because it can help just keep your plants above a certain temperature, but your plants might have different needs depending on the different time of day and different cloud cover conditions. So one thing that automation can do, for example, this is a temperature program in Orisha. You can create programs with different targets for different cloud cover conditions, just like irrigation we saw before. So what you can do is have a hotter temperature target for when it's sunny and a cooler temperature target for when it's cloudy, because your plants don't need as much heat when it's cloudy as when it's sunny, so you can adapt that. And also you can have different temperature targets for the night, the morning, and the day, to make sure that your plants will always have the right temperature for different times of the day, compared to a thermostat where you could just say like a fixed temperature for always. And then alerts. Arisha does it. You can set up alerts for when it's too hot or too cold. You're going to get a phone call or a text message. There are other solutions out there that can give you temperature alerts in your greenhouse, but the way we do it here is if we're around 75, if you want your greenhouse to be around 75 degrees Fahrenheit or 24 degrees Celsius, you could put an alert that's maybe 10 degrees Fahrenheit below that. So let's say 65 or something like that, or maybe not 65, let's say 60 degrees. And what it would do is that if your temperature cannot stay close to the target and it drops down to 60, you can get a phone call or a text message to alert you at that. So that can save your plants. If you're aware of that, you can go to the greenhouse and you can then implement a solution by hand that can help prevent your plants from freezing. So yeah, once again, if you're planning on taking a weekend off and you're worrying if your plants will freeze during that weekend, having a thermostat hooked up to your heater, having automation hooked up to your heater, or having alerts while you're away. If you have a friend, neighbor, once again, who could have those alerts instead of you, and just so they can react to anything that can happen, you can make sure that you can go away and not have to think about it, and that if something happens, you will have someone to take care of it. I say a neighbor or a friend a lot, but if you have employees as well, it can be a good opportunity to delegate that task to them for a little while. Your deliveries, the farmers market, other sales channels. So these are things you can also delegate if you want to take a weekend off. So the first thing you can do is plan ahead. So if you're always the one doing the farmers market, can you train an employee for that weekend? Can you find someone who can do just that weekend, a family member maybe, and so who can go for that Saturday afternoon at the market and just take care of it for that week? If so, the best thing you can do is to start training someone ahead. So like now, if you're going on vacation in a month, maybe you want to take a weekend a few weeks before that where you have the opportunity to train someone. And you can bring that person to the market with you. And for when you're going to be away, if that person has any problem, you want to not hear about it because you're away on vacation, you can do a list of what can go wrong. And you can kind of give that person, you can write down a list of what could go wrong and how they can solve it. So for example, what if my Square stops working, the machine they used to pay with, the customers used to pay with their card. So what if that stops working? And you can give troubleshooting tips for your employee. So just turn it off and turn it back on, it's going to work again. Or any kind of problems you can think of that could happen during the market, write them down and write solutions that you would use if it was you that was in the market. Or another example of a way to delegate is an example from a farm in Quebec called Jardin des Caps. So what they did essentially was just they planned a weekend off in their season. So they had a whole weekend where they said at the beginning of the season, it was a weekend in August, they said that weekend in August we are not doing deliveries. This is a weekend we take off for us this week. So they have been able to implement that weekend in their season, and they found ways to compensate for that weekend off with their customers. So they either gave more veggies before or after that week off, and or in some other cases, I saw they just added another week at the end of the season. So they just kind of pushed everything in the season to add a week at the end. And if you know you're going to have a weekend off where you're not doing delivery, you can also just harvest what you need to harvest for. So not necessarily what you're going to need to sell, but what you need to harvest to put it in your cold room. So you don't need to harvest as much the week before. So you can already save time in that week before your weekend off and make sure that you're not doing anything that's not absolutely necessary. And so if you know that you have some things in there that are not going to be good the week after, you can always transform them or discount them. And if you have some things you can leave in your field or in your greenhouse, you just leave them there, and that's going to save you a lot of precious time. Talking about your field. So yeah, field, the biggest issue we can have with going away and having a field that you have to manage is the irrigation. So once again, automation is a great solution for that. The same solution we saw with the greenhouse can be applied to outside. So you can always correlate the amount of sunset your plants get to the amount of times you're going to be irrigating your field. So that's a great way to do it. You connect a valve to your plumbing, and that valve can just be turned on at a certain set time. If you don't want to go with automation, you can always have a neighbor or an employee come for just that weekend and do a little bit of irrigation for you. And of course, one other thing that can happen that you can do for to manage that field is just to harvest, prune, and seed before and after. And as we saw just with the sales tactic for when you're away, just harvest what's necessary. If it overloads your team more to harvest more the week before, then don't do it if it's not absolutely necessary. If you're not going to lose that crop by not harvesting it this week and it allows you to take a weekend off, maybe leave it there, and you can always push that to a little bit later. And yeah, as we're getting further in the season, you have to plan your field for the colder months. So I know a lot of market gardeners make that mistake. They plant spinach in the field at the end of September, and it won't even have time to grow. It was going to get too cold. There's not going to be enough sun. So is it really worth it to plant at this point of the season? Have you ever experienced it? Are you trying to get more out of your field, but maybe you already know that at some point it's really just going to get too cold and you're going to have done that for nothing? If the answer is yes, then maybe you can allow yourself to not plant spinach at the end of September. With the time you save by not planting that spinach that's not going to have time to grow, can you take that time and harvest, let's say, the cabbages that you have already, just to save that time for your employee that's going to take care of the farmer's market that weekend? Because you can always pre-plan what he's going to bring to the farmer's market before you leave, and you can just take all that you've harvested during the week with the time you saved, and yeah, you're gonna have a lot more control on what's gonna happen that weekend while you're away, just by making sure that you harvest the right things instead of them while you're still here. And now, how to delegate. Maybe that while I was talking about having a friend over or a neighbor, or thinking that this is kind of just a magical thought that not everybody's going to want to help you while you're away. Well, there are ways that you can make people want to help you while you're away. Um, People can be really generous, especially with, I know, with a lot of farmers, they're surprised sometimes with the strength of their community when it comes the time to help them. So the first way you can make sure that you get delegate the right way is just to delegate the right tasks. So if you have someone taking over for you for the weekend, make sure that you delegate only the vital tasks. So don't ask that person to answer emails. These can wait until you're back. Especially, yeah, the season's getting slower and slower. It's the fall. You have less crops, less harvest. Plants don't grow as much. So yeah, everything slows down a little bit. Maybe some tasks can afford to have you away for 3 days. And find the right person. So you might have an employee who's just waiting to take more responsibilities on the farm. So maybe it's the right opportunity for you to delegate some more tasks to one of your employees. Yeah, a lot of people just want to feel more useful. They want to have more responsibilities. They want to be accountable for more things, and they'll be happy to take up more tasks. So yeah, if you take that weekend off and they prove that they can do it wrong, maybe you'll want to take more time off. So who knows? Maybe it's really a win-win situation. And yeah, don't hesitate to ask neighbors or friends who live nearby. Often they'll be happy to help. And even yeah, so, and for friends or neighbors, if they're not really used to working on a farm and they don't know really how to water your crops or how to crank your sides up, what you can do is just ask them, what do you need, so you're confident doing it. So you can, just by doing that, they're going to be able to tell you what they don't feel confident doing, and you can resolve that together. So you can film yourself watering the crops or cranking up the sides. Just, you can show them how you like it. You can give them the addresses they deliver to, or you can always do it with them before. So you can have that friend coming over, and you show him how you water the crops. And yeah, it's just a great way to make sure that you can have your mind free off of those tasks while you're away. And yeah, so your house is worth more than you think. This is Airbnb's slogan, and I think it's a great way to see how you can delegate. You might have a friend in the city who says he enjoys the city. He enjoys living there, but maybe he's tired of the noise, the people, traffic, and he just needs to have a weekend away from the city. And maybe just by offering him your house for the weekend, he's gonna have a free weekend away, like a free Airbnb, and you have a free employee for the weekend. So it's another win-win situation. So yeah, find of your friends from the city who needs a break and offer him your house in exchange for a few services, and you'll see that you probably have more friends than you think who would be happy to give you a hand. One thing that's really important also is to let go. So yeah, the market stand won't look the same as when you do it. Plants might be irrigated a little bit too much or too little, and your friend doing it half as well as you is probably way enough for 2 days. So if you've shown him how to do it, if you've answered this question, he can't mess it up enough that 2 days is going to be dramatic. So I'm sure that if you learn to let go a little bit, you'll find that after being away for 3 days, so like leaving Friday morning and coming back on Sunday, I'm sure that you'll find that everything's still all right. Final word. If you're thinking about, maybe I should go away for a weekend in a few weeks, book now. The best way to make sure that you take that time off is to plan it ahead, just to put it in your schedule, to make sure that by planning ahead, you can always work all of your schedule getting to that 3 days off ahead of time. So in 3 weeks, you know that you're going to take 3 days off. It makes you be able to plan right now or to take action right now to make sure that that everything when you get to those 3 days off is going to be ready. Remember also that if you're taking a weekend off, you're leaving Friday afternoon and coming back on Sunday. So you're just missing Saturday. It's as a full day. It's not a whole lot, um, and I'm sure anything that can happen if you delegate properly or automate, um, the worst that can happen cannot be that bad if it allows you to take 3 days off, take some time with your family, visit some friends. I'm sure if you're a grower, it's been a while since you had a time to take 3 days off, unless it's the month of January or something. So yeah, it makes sense. It's worth it. And the date doesn't matter. Whenever the weekend is, you'll be happy that you took the time off. And don't forget to plan it. You deserve it.